Welcome, everybody, back to the Three Man Rush podcast. Happy Good Friday. Happy Easter weekend. We are all here to give you a lovely mock draft again. Once again, like you said, we do 3 of these every year. This is mock draft 2.0. So I'm your host, Landon Oliver, here with both of my co-hosts, Andrew Scott and Jared Holly. And we just couldn't be more excited to bring you mock draft 2.0. This, of course, like our other initial mock draft, does not include trades. We save all the fun stuff, of course, for the week of the draft when we come out with our final mock draft. And, if you are new here, thank you for joining us. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you're notified every time a brand new episode drops. And if you're listening for the podcast version, we want to also shout out to you. Thank you so much for the support. Make sure to subscribe to any of those areas that you might be listening. But the good thing is with the YouTube, you do get a visual guide as well, as opposed to just listening. But listening, it's always entertaining. And look, because it is Easter weekend, we got some special stuff going on. As we were saved by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Stephon Gilmore has come to save the Indianapolis Colts secondary. So I do want to shout out to him. Before we get started here, we do have some Colts news. So Stephon Gilmore now added to the Indianapolis Colts. Really good piece. Not quite the defensive player of the year that he was a couple seasons back, but still relatively, pretty good productive player. And for the price they got him, I believe it was 2 years, $23 million, $14 million guaranteed, and that is only this season. So they can move on scot-free if it doesn't work out this year. Usually, like Chris Ballard likes to do the deals. It was a very team-friendly contract. It was a really good contract, which is what my concern was. And this is a loaded defense. This is probably one of the best, if not the best, in the AFC. You have an all-pro level player, multiple Pro Bowl level players at every position at the defense. Yannick Ngakoue, Kwity Paye, first-round pick, DeForest Buckner on the defensive line, Darius Leonard, of course, linebacker. Now you had Stephon Gilmore. They just signed Rodney McLeod. Julian Blackmon's coming back. Kenny Moore's still there. This loaded defense. So I do want to get your reactions real quick to the Stephon Gilmore signing. Jared, since you are a former Colts fan, I will pass it off to you. And, what does this do for the Colts? And are you excited about the move?
I think it helps them. Definitely. I think Gilmore's still a good player. I think he's got gas in the tank. Carolina had a much improved defense last year, even though he was hurt quite a bit. I think it makes it better. I think you're right, though. I think they're a top 5 defense in the AFC for sure.
Just the AFC, or do you think the NFL? Because they were number 9 overall in the NFL last season.
Gilmore definitely, I think, helps. It puts them over a little bit more. There's a lot of teams that made some good off-season acquisitions. Like, I think the Chargers definitely got better on defense. I put the Colts over the Chargers right now, though. Yeah, maybe top 5 NFL.
Yeah, it's tough to argue for sure. It's a very, like I said, they were number 9 in scoring defense last year, number 2 in takeaways, and they added Rodney McLeod, Yannick Ngakoue, and Stephon Gilmore to that core. So, sky's the limit. Andrew, Stephon Gilmore, I know we were talking about it the other day. You were kind of excited about maybe the Rams getting him. For once, it finally did not work out for you guys. You did not get a player. So, what's your take on what Stephon Gilmore brings to the Colts, and where do you think that places them now in the contention spot for the division and the conference?
Yeah, I think it'll be so I didn't watch a lot of Carolina games last year, but I did watch a few. In the games that I watched, he looked really good to me. One of the ones that I watched was the game where he apparently told the coach before the game, hey, I want to cover Cobb Hits today whenever they played Atlanta. He looked really well that game. That was one that I did sit down and watch at the time. I think some people soured on him a little bit, but I think similar to Von Miller last year, similar to what Khalil Mack is going to do this year, you see guys go to better situations. I think he'll he might not be defensive player of the year good, but I think he will look better than how a lot of people are viewing him right now. The Colts were already my favorite to win that division, so that just really further solidifies it for me. And I think I would probably still take Buffalo's defense overall. But I think they're right there with the Chargers for, like, you can kind of flip a coin for the second best defense in the AFC. That's me personally.
Yeah, that's kind of where I place them. I've kind of got all three kind of looped together. I think the Chargers, Buffalo, and the Colts are kind of vying for 1 through 3 there. I think it could fall either way. So
Baltimore's one to keep an eye on too, with them getting guys healthy this year.
And Pittsburgh is always a really good defense as well.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a good move. Something I did not know, and maybe that was a little bit why I soured on him. I did not know this, was that he did have the torn quad at the end of 2020, and then it kept him out for a lot of the season last year as well. So whenever he was coming back from a major injury. So I didn't know there was any injury, like a major injury that had occurred, there at his time in New England, carrying into next season. So, we'll see if another year from that injury does help. But even with that, I looked up some stuff, just kind of trying to familiarize, myself with the move. Apparently he was PFF. I know I don't like uttering those words, but he was their number 3 ranked man coverage corner and number 7 overall corner in the NFL whenever he did return. So possibly getting a healthier version of a guy that was still a top 10 cornerback last year. And for a very, very, very good deal, which to me is the main thing. So,
the problem with Carolina last year was not their defense either.
No.
Like they played actually really well for the most part all season long as far as defense goes.
Well, yeah, and that defense was on the field a lot.
Right. A corner that I know Landon and I were both extremely high on last year too, that they took in the draft, J.C. Horn, he was hurt as well. So they were, that he spent a decent amount of the year out too. So they were dealing with injuries on that side of the ball aplenty in the secondary.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really excited about it. I think, like Drew said, I don't think they're going to get defensive player of the year, Stephon Gilmore, but I do think they possibly get a top 10 cornerback who's getting paid like cornerback 17 at the moment. So it's not even getting paid like a top 15 corner. And this just, like I said, solidifies the defense. The Colts, they didn't have that option of going and getting that top 5, quarterback in the league, trading for Russell Wilson or, really high draft pick. So, I mean, we'll see, the draft's coming up. They need to address some weapons there, but they did everything. You see all these power moves being made. Devontae Adams, getting moved over. Then you have, the Chargers off season, Russell Wilson going to the Broncos, Tyreek Hill going to Miami. You see all these huge offensive pieces getting moved over to the AFC. Well, if you can't get another quarterback or you can't get, one of these top tier wide receivers and weapons, what's a great way to balance that out? That's addressing the defensive side of the ball and stopping those things. So, we'll see if it works out for them, but this is not a Colts podcast. We are here to do a mock draft. And so we have our NFL mock draft 2.0, which if you did not know, I know that rhymes. We were more accurate in the final mock draft than ESPN, than Yahoo, than NFL Network. We got them all beat. So like we said in mock draft version 1.0, we are coming here to, we're laying our cards out on the table here. This is not something that we kind of half-ass our way through. We put in the work. We're really excited to get to it. So without further ado, that Drew's back. Let's go ahead and pull up mock draft 2.0 and let's just kick it off. So a lot of these guys we kind of talked on in pretty good length during mock draft 1.0. So we're not going to sit here. We're not going to give you a full scouting breakdown of everyone. And it might not even be as much info as mock draft 1.0, but there are some changes that we do want to go over for sure. So without further ado, Jacksonville is on the clock here. We both have them, the same guy we had them taken in 1.0, and that is defensive end, edge rusher, Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. Now, there were some talks about, they're looking for an offensive player, blah, 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 blah. Look, we all know smoke screens happen this time of the year. They're going to take the best player available. And I think it looks like for both of us, that's Aiden Hutchinson. So anything to add on this one, guys?
No, pretty straightforward. I think they take their number one player on the board, and I think this is most likely it, especially with what they did with the offensive line in the offseason. Before free agency, I thought possibly an offensive lineman, but I'd be pretty surprised if it wasn't Hutchinson now.
Yeah, for sure. Jared, anything to add?
Yeah, I don't see them going offense like weapons of any kind. They did some acquisitions in the offseason as well. And I mean, that's the best player on the board. It doesn't make any sense to differentiate from that whatsoever. It's the best pick.
Yeah. All right. So now let's get into Detroit, where we do have a change. They are not going quarterback like I had them last year. We both have them taking an edge rusher, but we do have two different ones. I have them settling down with Kayvon Thibodeau. Drew has them actually taking a guy that's been, in talk about pick number 1 overall. Like I said, I think there's a lot of that's a little bit of a smoke screen, but guys have just been an athletic freak, and that is Trevon Walker out of Georgia. So, Drew, curious, why do you have him over Thibodeau, and what kind of led you to this pick for them?
So mock 1.0, I had Thibodeau here, but I'm not believing. I do think that number 1 overall is a smoke screen, but I am buying the hype overall that I do think that a lot of teams are really rising on this guy. And so even though I think Thibodeau should be the next pass rusher off the board, I essentially really am just buying into the hype. We'll see if it sticks on 3.0. But for now, just with everything I'm reading about how intrigued everybody is with his upside, things like that, I do think that there's a real shot that he's the second pass rusher off the board. And I did, for a brief moment, I considered Sauce Gardner here as well, just because I do think, they've got just a lot of guys in their cornerback room that are just guys, like maybe some of them hit, but I thought about that as well. But I think that it is 2 pass rushers coming off, but that's why I ended up with Trayvon.
Yeah, and so I actually had them taking a quarterback. I had them taking Malik Willis, and I think for sure this is a prime trade down spot as well, for teams that are looking to trade up for a quarterback. But I kind of did a little bit of thinking on it, and obviously the GM there in Detroit, former Rams GM, I believe quite a few of his first picks whenever he got the Rams job were on the defensive line. So it's clear, I think he had like 4 picks in a row of his first rounders that went for defensive linemen there. Which included, Aaron Donald.
They all hit Aaron Donald, Robert Quinn, Michael Brockers.
Yeah. So, it's clear that, that is an area that he likes to address early if it is not settled, and it is not quite settled in Detroit. They do have some pieces there, but, I just think the Trayvon Walker thing, I think basically it comes down to athleticism plus production. Trayvon Walker was not as productive as Kayvon Thibodeau. I think their athletic testing is a little bit different, even though it's not far off. Kayvon Thibodeau is still a freak, but not as much as a freak as Trevon Walker. Right. But that being said, Kayvon Thibodeau had a much, much, much higher pressure rate, and had a lot more production. And I do think he does kind of fit their scheme a little bit better, for what they're looking for there for an edge rusher. So that's just why I went with them. But I do like the Trevon Walker pick, and I can definitely see it happening. So Houston, let's move on now. I believe, I flip-flopped the offensive tackles, but we did have them addressing offensive tackle. I think Drew had them taking the one. So I have them taking Evan Neal. Drew's got them Ike Ekwonu. All right. So, do we want to talk through this one real quick, or it's pretty straightforward?
Yeah. This is basically a team that just needs everything. But starting with the offensive line, I think would be a good start. I'm not sure who I think should be the first tackle off the board, but I think that Ekwonu will end up being the first tackle off the board. So that's why I went with him here. But to be honest, it's between Ekwonu, Evan Neal, and Charles Cross. There's not really one guy that I just am in love with over the other. I think that there are 3 really, really good tackles right here at the top of the class that I wouldn't have a problem with any of them, being the first one off the board, honestly. So, but he's the one that I think will be the first one off the board. Whether that's the right call or not, we'll see. But that's how I see it playing out.
I think Houston should have all 32 picks.
They could use
an entire team.
Yeah, at this point, for sure. So with me going with Evan Neal, I have heard some things that some teams do view Ike Ekwonu as possibly more of a guard. At the NFL level, they're not quite sold on him as a franchise left tackle, where I don't think there's any of those concerns for teams for Evan Neal. So that's just kind of why I picked him there over him. But as you can see, I don't really have him falling that far. All right, so let's move
Right.
on to the New York Jets. I have them taking Drew's favorite guy, cornerback Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. You actually have Thibodeau going here. What are your guys' views on what the Jets are going to do with this pick?
The first mock draft, I had them going Sauce Gardner. I was ready to just do it all over again. Until actually today, I saw where the name is escaping me. I apologize, but the person that covers the Jets for The Athletic, they had quoted a tweet like talking about, players that fans would like the Jets to draft and things like that. And he quoted it just straight up was saying the Jets aren't taking a cornerback at 4 or 10, something like that. Now, how many smoke screens are involved with the information that he's getting, how accurate that is, we don't know. But for now, I followed the tea leaves and ended up changing my pick. And I do think that, with some of the guys that they missed out on, but they pursued in free agency, I think, and with how Robert Saleh built his defenses in San Francisco, with going heavy on pass rush, and same with Joe Douglas in his pass roles as well. They seem to really heavily, go after edge rushers. So all of that information made me change my pick, even though I would love Sauce Gardner here. I think it makes a lot of sense. The cornerback room definitely needs humongous upgrades. But just some of that information that I came across made me sway the direction I went.
Yeah, for me, it basically just needs to be the best defensive player available. And I think they can, say what they want, but and look, if Thibodeau was available in my mock, I would have taken him here for certain. Wouldn't have even been much of a question for sure. I don't think he's going to last until 4. So that being said, I just took the best defensive player on my board that was available, and it's at an extreme position of need. They do have some decent defensive line piece there.
Yeah.
In the Jets organization, but their cornerback room is a mess. So yeah, they can say they're not going to pick one, early on, but everything that I think should happen, I think they should just take the best player available, and it just so happens to be at a huge position of need for them. So that's where I went. That Jared, what are you thinking?
Yeah, like last year, the Jets were a team that everyone ran all over, but a lot of it had to do with you could pass all over them as well. They gave up, I think, the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL last year. But I think that is kind of a smokescreen to how bad their cornerback situation is. That's the reason why I lean with Gardner as well in that scenario. I think he would definitely benefit them the most in the area they need the most improvement in.
Yeah, and just to be clear, if this was like me picking what I thought they should do, I'd be probably be completely on board. I'd be picking the same exact thing. I think Sauce Gardner would be the pick here.
Yeah. And like I said, even, I had Thibodeau going earlier, or else I would have thrown him there, to match you. Cause I do think, that he's a higher player on my board. So now let's move on to the other New York team. You're going to be hearing New York a lot, like we said in the last mock draft.
Yeah.
And that is the Giants. I actually have them, taking Travon Walker here. He's still going to end up being a top 5 pick. I just think the guys going ahead of him, they've had a little bit more production, and they're all really, really good players. But yeah, I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be a great player, and I think the Giants will continue to add to that defensive line and that defense overall. You have them taking Evan Neal here at offensive tackle. So curious, I'm going to pass this one down to Jared. Which direction do you think the Giants should go in the most here?
I kind of lean towards Drew. I feel like they definitely need some more help with the tackle position. The Giants are another team that's they're all over the place as far as both sides of the ball, like right now. And I don't know. I kind of lean towards Neal a little bit more in that situation. I think you can't go wrong with either pick. They're a team with a lot of holes, and either one of those guys would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the defensive player I've got him taken at pick number 7, I actually like more than the offensive lineman here as a player. But there's another very offensive line needy team picking right after him. So I gave them the offensive lineman here so they could get, their guy ahead of a team that's also very likely to address the offensive line. But I've got them going defense here in a couple picks as well. But Evan Neal was the guy I think is the second offensive lineman to come off the board. And this is a team where you really only got like one offensive lineman that you're happy with right now, as far as the Giants go. So I
they've
think
made some moves in free agency, as well.
Yeah, we'll see how they work out. But
Mark Lewinsky's a good player.
I still think offensive line, especially the tackle position, is a huge need. And Evan Neal, I believe, played both left and right tackle. So if they're happy with their guy at left tackle, they can put Neal at right tackle, comfortably.
Yeah, and I actually have them addressing tackle as well here in a few picks. So it's not like I have them completely ignoring that either.
Right.
So now we, get on to the run of offensive tackles where we both have Carolina taking an offensive tackle. I think a quarterback could be in play here as well. So we'll see what happens. I know there's been some rumors, possibly of Baker Mayfield ending up in Carolina. And
not according to Robbie Anderson.
Yeah. Robbie Anderson was not a big fan of that, apparently.
Yeah, that was funny.
He shut that down real quick, which I don't think I'm taking any quarterback advice from Robbie Anderson. So that being said, we both have them taking the offensive tackle here, just different players. I have them taking Ike Ekwonu. You have them taking Charles Cross. So not really much to say there. And then that brings us to the New York Giants again. And so this is where I have Charles Cross coming off the board, and you have Sauce Gardner coming off the board. So they're both getting an offensive tackle. They're both getting a premier defensive player with both of their picks. So, I mean, anything you guys want to add to any of these two picks?
No, for me, it's just the Bradbury rumors of him possibly getting traded or cut just because of the cap space that they need to be able to sign their rookie class, as well as have some wiggle room throughout the year. Even if they restructure Bradbury and he sticks, I do still think that Sauce Gardner would be a great fit here, regardless of who else is on the roster. But the Bradbury stuff is kind of what led me to pick him here, since I did have him dropping a few spots from 1.0.
Jared, anything to add?
No.
Move on. All right. Yep. So now we finally get to the fun stuff. And that is the first quarterback off the board for both of us. And that is Atlanta with pick number 8, taking Malik Willis. I honestly think if they want to pick Malik Willis, they're going to have to trade up, because I think there's going to be a lot of trades, as you'll see in our final mock draft, for this pick. But that being said, if it does lie the way it does lie now, I think Atlanta takes the quarterback. I think they take Malik Willis, have him set a year under Marcus Mariota, kind of learn the ropes of the NFL, and then he's ready to take over next year, because I believe Mariota was only a 1-year deal. So, I mean, they're going to be right back in the situation next year.
I think it was technically a 2-year deal, but it could essentially be a 1-year deal, the way it was structured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Malik Willis here. Drew, what made you go with Atlanta taking this pick?
I mean, I still think he's the first quarterback off the board, and honestly, this still might be a little bit high, just in terms of like the other players that I think are still here. But whenever you're a team that hopes to not be picking this high up very much, in the near future, if you're sitting at the 8th overall pick and you're able to grab your guy at quarterback, the person that you as the number 1 quarterback, even if it is looked at as a not as strong of a quarterback class, I think this is enough of a point to where they can take the lead. It's 1 pick earlier than I had Seattle taking Malik Willis in 1.0. So it's 1 pick earlier than the last one. But I think at this point it does start to make sense. Carolina, for me, the reason I didn't, what you mentioned, quarterback is an option, and I agree. And I mean, they've hosted the quarterbacks, but if they passed on Justin Fields and Mac Jones last year with their early first-round pick to grab J.C. Horn, it's just hard for me to see them, unless they're trying to overcorrect, I guess. It's hard for me to see them grab a quarterback at 6 whenever they passed on those guys who I think if either one of them would have been in this draft class, they would both be considered quarterback one. So for them passing on both of those guys, it's hard for me to go quarterback, but he very well could end up being the case. But since that wasn't, I think Atlanta and Seattle is the floor, for the quarterbacks at that point for the first one to come off.
Yeah, I agree. And, just to kind of point out with Carolina as well, you do have guys still out there kind of like Baker Mayfield, possibly Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think that makes more sense.
Yeah. So, you could see them kind of going in that direction and then shoring up their offensive line for whichever quarterback they do decide to get, if it is not a rookie. I think that's where this goes. And now we'll move on to Seattle, where I do have them taking another quarterback. We have back-to-back quarterbacks off the board here. A little high for me, honestly, but that's just, from things that I've heard. There's possibly 2 quarterbacks going in the top 10. And these are the 2 that seem to be linked as the 2 best in the class for most teams. So I have Seattle taking quarterback Kenny Pickett. Drew actually has them going cornerback, not quarterback, cornerback. With Kenny Pickett here, I think he's, I do think he's a good player. I don't really have any quarterback in this class rated as a top 10 player, but as we know, with the way these contracts are coming out, they're just getting out of control, having that 5th-year option and a quarterback on a rookie deal. And I do think he is possibly the most pro ready out of all of these guys to step in right away. They do still have some pieces there, with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the running game is still pretty decent. Possibly some defensive pieces as well. They re-signed some guys back there. So this could be their way of, kind of retooling and then building around another rookie quarterback as well. So Drew, cornerback here. What made you go this? Just best player available pretty much?
Yeah. Position of need, best player available. The Seahawks have shown that they are not worried on they're not scared to pounce on players whose draft stock might have, taken a little bit of a hit because of injury or whatever the case may be. I think Stingley did himself some favors at his pro day as well, to where, this was a guy that 2 years ago we were talking about, he's going to be like a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. And even though I still don't like him as much as I do Sauce Gardner, I do think that it is a very 1A, 1B situation. And I had a hard time letting a player of his caliber slip out of the top 10 this go around. And so, the fit made sense. But the other position I was considering was quarterback, but the guy that I would want to put there for me, I think the most NFL ready guy is Desmond Ridder, but I don't think he goes this high. So if this was what I think teams should do, I would be considering Ridder at number 9. But since this is what I think, the teams will actually end up doing, this was as far as I could let Stingley go.
Yeah, definitely not a bad pick for a guy that I had coming off. To me, it was my cornerback 1 coming into the draft. So let's move on to the New York Jets. And we have the same player here. They finally get their wide receiver after they've swung and missed countless times this offseason to get one. They finally found theirs in the draft with their 2nd top 10 pick, and that is Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. To me, he's the best wide receiver in the class. I know there's some debate because there are so many good ones, it seems like, but I think he just fits what they need very well. Pairs really well with Corey Davis, a big body guy, where Garrett Wilson is just more, he can do everything really well. And I think he, still has elite speed, really great body control, really good route runner, really good hands. He's just kind of the total package there, and he fits what they need. So this is finally their shot to get a wide receiver. I know there's been some talk about them possibly trading 10th overall for a more, developed and ready, Pro Bowl type wide receiver, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. So Drew, Garrett Wilson, what made you go with this pick?
Yeah, me personally, I still like Drake London a little bit more, but I think if you look at, and maybe it's a coincidence of just the guys that were available, but if you look at the receivers that they went after with trying, looking at trading for Amari Cooper, looking at trading for Calvin Ridley before the gambling news came out, looking at Tyreek Hill, I think Garrett Wilson has more similarities with those players they were targeting than Drake London does. And so that's kind of what maybe, and I think similar to corner, I think this could be a 1A, 1B situation with him, with Wilson and Drake London. So it wasn't, even though I think London might need to be the first wide receiver off the board, it wasn't a huge stretch for me to try to come to peace with the fact with this pick. So just kind of looking at what they were going after through the trade market, and then the guy that Garrett Wilson is sitting there, at the top, the wide receiver class, it was an easy connection for me. And I mean, I like what they've done with some of their recent, wide receiver picks and things like that, but still think that they could use a guy that could be a true number one, which I think Wilson presents that guys on that team really don't. And you drafted your franchise quarterback, you got to see if he's the guy. And so, I mean, you protect him and then surround him with weapons. So if it's not going to be offensive line, it's got to be wide receiver for me. And there's not an offensive lineman there. Once you get past Charles Cross, there's not a guy I'm not really comfortable putting in the top 10. So,
yeah, Jared, anything to add here on the Garrett Wilson pick? How do you think that helps the New York Jets? And, do you think they possibly go in a different direction?
No, they're going. I think they'll go wide receiver with their second pick. And yeah, like Drew said too, they want to see what they got with Zach Wilson. I mean, he was their number one pick last year. And he needs more weapons at the end of the day too. Corey Davis, I thought played pretty well. He got hurt, and that kind of hurt his stock a little bit. And they still got Elijah Moore too, right? Like he was their rookie last year.
Yeah, I like Elijah a lot.
Right. Yeah, he shows a lot of sign too. So yeah, I think another young piece to that offense would definitely help out Zach Wilson quite a bit.
All right, so that takes care of our top 10 picks. Let's move on now down the board here with number 11, Washington Commanders. Lot of stuff going on there in Washington. Man,
there sure is.
There's a lot of stuff going on there with financial fraud, shit busting through the pipes, just sexual assault, racism, you name it. Dan Snyder's tied to it. And so we'll see how that ends up working out for them. But they do have a draft pick in the first round, and that's number 11 overall. I actually have them going on a guy that's been rising considerably up boards. A lot of stuff that I've talked about him possibly being a top 10 pick. I don't think he's quite there yet, but I do have falling right outside, and that is Jameson Williams out of Alabama. Apparently they're talking about him maybe not even missing time, coming back from the injury because his rehab has been so good. And I actually saw a video of him working out the other day. Dude looks really, really, really good. Very quick recovery, it does seem like. So we both have them taking a wide receiver here, helping out Commander Carson. And, we just have different wide receivers. So you actually have them going Chris Olave. I have them taking Jameson Williams.
Yeah. So for me with Chris Olave, I read a really interesting note from Josh Norris with the Underdog Network. And he had followed Carolina closely whenever Ron Rivera was there as well. And he made a note that during his time in Carolina, he only attended 3 pro days that weren't located in North Carolina. And that was Cam Newton, Patrick Peterson, and Christian McCaffrey. And then this year he made it 4 non-North Carolina pro days whenever he went to Ohio State's pro day and was connected to these 2 wide receivers, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And so, maybe he was there because he loves Garrett Wilson and he's hoping Garrett Wilson makes it to 11, which he almost does for both of us. But maybe it's Chris Olave, we don't really know. But if it was enough to get him out of North Carolina, I definitely think he's interested in one of the 2 guys, if not both. So even though I don't think he should be the next receiver off the board, just kind of, again, following those tea leaves and reading that really interesting note from Josh Norris, I ended up going with Olave.
Yeah. It's very good. And, it's actually a guy that I'm looking at my mock draft as well that I somehow have left out of the first round, even though I meant to put him in there. So yeah, I can pretty much tell you where I would slot him in as well whenever the pick does come. But yeah, the Commanders.
It's gonna be so hard saying that all year long. Like,
it's
this
tough.
team just
Yeah.
changes its name like it's underwear anymore. Like it's
Well, they need to change their owner.
Yeah.
pretty soon,
yeah,
so
yeah.
They make
see.
all the name changes they want.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. All right, so that moves us to Minnesota, where we both have them taking a cornerback here. I had them taking Derek Stingley Jr., falling right outside the top 10. To me, one of my top 10 players in the draft, so I think they get a steal here. You actually have them going Trent McDuffie out of Washington. So, I mean, I think we're both kind of on board here of what they really need. I know Patrick Peterson is back, so be a really good situation to learn.
Still a need.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it'd be a really good situation for a rookie corner to step into and learn from a guy like that. So still a need. You know, I don't really see them going anywhere else outside of that. But as we know, the draft does make surprises. You know, Jared, is there anything you're kind of curious, you're kind of watching here for Minnesota?
Yeah, if Stingley fell to him at 12, that'd be great. That'd be a really good pick for them.
Yeah, that's a steal for sure.
You guys got McDuffie pretty much. Like, I'm kind of skipping ahead and looking at it a little bit. I think that's probably the most realistic landing spot for him. But if they land a Stingley at 12, that would be awesome. It'd be really good for them.
Yeah, I'm sure they would really love that. All right, so now let's move on to Houston here, and we have them both taking a secondary player. I have them taking McDuffie here at 13. Whereas Drew had him going 12 to the Minnesota Vikings. Drew has Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, the safety, coming on here. Almost wanted to leave him out of the first round. You know, completely here just based off of the fact that he said LeBron's better than Jordan and Drake is better than Michael Jackson. So I took that guy.
He might have a point with the last one.
He does not have a point with the last one. It is not. I took him off my first round board. I still put him in there. He's still going in the first round, but I did have to drop him. I can't be having MJ slander of any kind.
I was gonna say maybe he has something against MJ.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe there's something going on. Is he a big fan of the Spider-Man movies? I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe he hates them. It doesn't. I mean, it seems likely that he's not a huge fan of Spider-Man as well. So, all right. So, Baltimore Ravens, we both have the same pick as well here, and that is edge Jermaine Johnson. Pretty easy. Baltimore and pass rushers. It's peanut butter and jelly. I mean, is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, you had the whole Zadarius Smith thing too, you know. But I think that Jermaine Johnson would be a great pairing with Odafe Owe that they took last year in the first round. I think that would set them up with two incredibly young and talented edge rushers.
Yeah, I agree. I think this would be a really good pick. All right, so now we go on to another East Coast team here in Philadelphia with another pick that's exactly the same. We both have wide receiver Drake London going at this spot. I know this is Drew's wide receiver one in the class, so Philly would be really excited to get him here. He had pretty decent pro day. He didn't run or do the 40 or anything like that. But that being said, he did show off some pretty ridiculous end zone catches. Obviously it's a big target in the end zone.
Yeah.
So I'll actually pass the buck over to you because I know you're such a big Drake London fan. Tell us a little bit about this pick in Philadelphia.
I just think, man, that even though I don't think he should fall this far, I think he would be the perfect complement to Devontae Smith. Like, I think these guys would complement each other so well and cause so many problems for secondaries on Sundays. And it gives you the opportunity to really see, is Jalen Hurts the guy? Because they made a trade with New Orleans Saints, and then moves they've made in the past, things have set them up really well to where they've made it pretty clear that, Jalen, this is your year. Show us that we shouldn't get a quarterback. And if he doesn't, next year, they are in prime position to move up and get one. So I think it makes a lot of sense with having 2 first-round picks to take one of them to get another weapon opposite of Devontae Smith. And then, obviously having Dallas Goedert there as well. I think that, and then Jalen Reagor, another former first-round pick. I think that at that point, you're going to be able to know if Jalen's your guy or not. Again, I don't think Drake London has any business falling this far, but if he does, I really, really like the fit.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a fantastic pick for them. So, Jared, anything about Drake London here going to Philly? How do you think that that works out for them?
I'd love to see Jalen Hurts throw more. And this is definitely the guy, like at 15 especially. It would be awesome for them to have that. I think he would excel in other situations better, but for Jalen Hurts especially, I think that's the guy they should go after if he's that low.
Yeah, I mean they made a trade with the Saints as well, to get more draft picks for next year. So if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out this year, they just have so much ammo to move up and get that quarterback of the future next year's draft. So speaking of that, let's move on to the Saints, who we have both have picking their quarterbacks of the future. Jameis Winston did resign there, but I think they are clearly in the quarterback market, due to the trade. And, this is a team I think is a prime spot to trade up into that top 10 to get, the guy that they're really high on as well.
Yep.
So I have them taking Desmond Ridder here, who Drew, I'm sure, would be excited about, going this high up. And to me, he was my favorite quarterback in this class as well. I really, really high on Desmond Ridder. So there's been a lot of talk about him now, firmly being in that first round picture. With some of these quarterback needy teams and the way he's conducted himself in interviews and stuff like that. So I think he is firmly a first round quarterback now. And I think he goes to the Saints at this spot if things stay the same like they are here. You actually have them taking Kenny Pickett, a guy that I had going top 10 as well, over to Seattle. Are you big on Kenny Pickett?
Honestly, I'm really not, but I think he ends up being the second quarterback off the board, and this is the spot I had pegged for the second quarterback to come off. Me personally, I think at the worst, Ridder should be the second quarterback coming off, and then I struggle if I even would go Kenny Pickett over Matt Corral or not, but trying to get out of my own brain and get into the brain of what I've read about NFL GMs and how they view it and things like that. And it seems like Kenny Pickett is the most likely to be the second one off the board. So that's the guy I went with, but I like your guy more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I have Kenny Pickett going top 10. So it's going to be a little hard for him to get there. And then also Nolan Arenado just went yard again.
Yep.
So that's awesome. 10-1. That guy is on another planet right now.
He's down to hitting 500.
Great. He is crushing balls right now. So we had to throw a little bit of baseball here. I am wearing the Cardinals hat. I'm sure Drew's got some Cardinal stuff. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we're fully into baseball season over here, but we are in draft season as well. So let's move on to the Chargers. And I have Devin Lloyd going here. This is where I would have Chris Olave going if I was not an idiot and left him off for whatever. I swear I did not mean to leave him off. So if you're listening to this show, this happens about once every year with a mock draft where I'm going through and changing things and I just absolutely blank on a guy just because I've worked all day. I'm working on this at the end of the day. I'm moving guys around, moving guys through the board, and I just end up deleting the name, and then I'm going through and I'm looking and I just forget. So yeah, this is where I would have Devin Lloyd going to the Patriots at 21. I would have Chris Olave going here to the Los Angeles Chargers because that defense is set. Their offensive line's really good. Quarterback set. Tight end, there's some question marks there, but there's not a tight end good enough. They re-signed, Keenan Allen's not getting any younger, still a really great receiver.
Yeah.
Just re-signed Mike Williams, but outside of that, there are some question marks there in the wide receiver room.
I like Josh Palmer a lot.
Yeah, I think Palmer's a good player, but I think Chris Olave puts this offense to another level. And so this is where I would have Chris Olave going. But if you're watching on YouTube, it does say Devin Lloyd. And you have them taking Jordan Davis here. Which I would love personally. I think that would be awesome for them. Just continue to solidify that defense. So Jared, what do you think the Chargers should do here? You think they should go with a wide receiver like Chris Olave and just keep
Load up
pumping
that defense. Let's keep loading it up. Like I think Herbert can make. I think he's an elite quarterback. I think he can make guys better than what they actually are. There was another name too. I like Jalen Guyton. I think he's a solid receiver as well. That can help him out. And I still think there's some gas left in the tank. And Mike Williams, who's not super old, he's not Keenan Allen up there in years yet, but I think there's still a lot of gas left in both those tanks. I'd load up on the defense, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I just think with the way the league's trending, and especially now you're seeing these wide receivers just get mad, like they're getting quarterback money. So if you can get a young receiver, another great receiver on a rookie deal for 5 years, I think you're going to see a lot of wide receivers go in this first round just because Jacksonville completely destroyed the wide receiver market.
yeah, they sure
They're
did.
not the only team to destroy the wide receiver market.
Oh no, but as an AFC South and Colts fan, I've got to take a shot at Jacksonville whenever I can get one in, because I mean they pretty much destroy me on a yearly basis. At least once a season. So, all right. So now the Eagles have 18. So even though the Eagles did make the trade and they don't have 3 first rounders, they still have 2 first rounders.
Yeah.
So they're not done. And this one was a little surprising to me. Drew's pick here. I have them taking Kyle Hamilton here, going to Rod in Philly and, take those awful takes off of the internet. Just can't do it. But you actually have them taking Kyer Elam, the cornerback. So, I don't think you had him. Did you have him in the first round in your last draft?
Yeah, I did, but I had him down at 23 to
end.
Arizona. Yeah, I did have him down at 23 to Arizona in the first mock draft. But honestly, man, he's a guy that I have been rising on recently. And I read something today from ESPN that the guy like Matt Miller and McShay and those guys that worked the NFL draft, they put out like a, what we're hearing lately type of thing. And again, there's smoke screens involved with that. But one of the notes in there was that Kyer Elam was a name that they were hearing that might go higher than people think. But whatever they were saying, that they were prefacing it with like Buffalo at, like 25, something like that. So like still not this high, but it's a guy that I have been rising on. It's a guy that apparently these guys are hearing, the GMs are rising on, how true that is, we'll see. But I wanted to go Devin Lloyd here, honestly, because there's a clear need there and he's a special player and I think he should be there. But the Eagles just complete disregard of drafting linebackers early made it difficult for me to mock it happening, even though I think it makes a lot of sense. And so I went with a player that I like a lot at a premium position where I think, opposite of Darius Slay, he would do really well. So it's just somebody that I've been rising on, and that what I read this morning kind of helped me pull the trigger on putting him up higher than probably most people would have him.
Yeah. So Jared, is there anything, you're looking here for Philadelphia going defense? Do you think they actually take the linebacker here, or do you kind of think they stick in the secondary and, pair one of these guys, with some decent secondary pieces?
Yeah. Personally, I think the safety probably makes the most sense in this scenario, but I mean, they've got some holes on defense as well, where I don't know if Elam would go that early. I think he'll go before 25, though. Like, I definitely think that'll happen. I see Arizona actually making a stand on that because I think they need a little bit of secondary help as well. But
yeah, I think that should be his floor as well. Like, I think he has, at least for me personally, he has separated himself. Like between him and Andrew Booth, between him and Andrew Booth for who should be the next corner off after the I guess quote unquote big three of Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, and Trent McDuffie. For me personally, he's the next guy up, and I like him a decent amount more than I do Andrew Booth, even though I do still have Booth going in the first round as well.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense for sure. They are also in the Tyrann Mathieu sweepstakes as well, from what I've heard. Mm-hmm. And they did actually try. They tried really hard to sign Stephon Gilmore. They were the only other team that made a run at him as hard as Indy did. So I mean, it's clear that they are in the secondary market, for either a corner or a safety. So we'll see how this works out. So now let's move on to New Orleans with their second pick, which, like I said, we both kind of see that they might not have two picks when all is said and done.
Yeah.
But that being said, right now they do, and we both have them taking Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle, out. I don't really know what else there is to say here. I mean, I think offensive tackle is a massive need, especially after losing their left tackle who went down to Miami. This to me would be a fantastic pick for the Saints.
Yeah, he's the last tackle that I really like for a first rounder. I know there's Bernard Raymond out there as well, but Trevor Penning's the last guy that I'm like really comfortable putting in the first round. And like you said, with them losing their left tackle in free agency, I think it makes a lot of sense. But as you also said, I think they have situated themselves to where they are a clear candidate to trade up and grab their guy quarterback with these 2 first-round picks with the trade that they made with Philly. It was very similar to that, kind of how Philly built up to trading up to number 2 overall to grab Wentz. So we'll see if that ends up playing out. But yeah, spoiler alert, I think me and Landon will probably both have them trading up whenever 3.0 comes out, whenever we throw the trades in it as well.
Yeah. All right. So now let's get into our, that takes care of 1 through 19. Now let's, finish up with the last pick. We'll start here. Pick number 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We both have them taking a quarterback here. I actually have Matt Corral going up here. You actually have your boy Desmond Ridder. I think would be a fantastic pick as well. Matt Corral to me has been rising up draft boards. I think he's clearly, to me, kind of separated himself into quarterback 3 in this class. So for them, for Pittsburgh, it does seem like, they did sign Trubisky, they do still have Mason Rudolph. We'll see if they make a move up as well. If they're sold on one of these quarterbacks, I think it's entirely possible for them to do that. But it's also entirely possible for them to go a completely different direction and worry about quarterback next year. But eventually, look, they're going to have to address the position at some point, because they've neglected it for the last 3 years. Kevin Colbert is now retiring after this. This is going to be his last draft. So I think this might be the draft, kind of similar to how Ozzie Newsome did in Baltimore, where, his last draft, he takes Lamar Jackson and leaves his mark on the franchise. I think Colbert can do that here, and he can get that quarterback of the future for Pittsburgh, and then leave them in a good spot, for whoever ends up taking over that job. So whether it's Corral, whether it's Ridder, we both have them taking a quarterback. Jared, is there anything you want to add here on Pittsburgh, or do you think they go in a different direction at all? I mean,
no, I think they draft for the future. I do. I think Trubisky or Mason Rudolph's a 1-year thing. It would be best case scenario. Ridder falls to them at 20. That'd be great. But they're gonna take a quarterback with their first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, we have that happening, but we'll see what happens. Pittsburgh is one of those teams that they're very enigmatic when you're trying to find out what they're, outside of last year where I think the entire world had them taking Najee Harris. I think offensive line is a big need for that team. It's a huge need.
Absolutely.
So I think, that's personally the direction I think they should go in, and then try to get their quarterback next season. But I mean, I can definitely see them making that move now. Now we move on to New England. And like I said, this is where I would have Devin Lloyd sliding in. But as of right now, I have Boy Mafe, and Drew has them going wide receiver, and actually has Jameson Williams, the slide stopping here for him.
Yeah.
I think that would be a fantastic pick. Anything to get Mac Jones more weapons as well. So that being said, the reason why I would put Devin Lloyd here is just because Bill Belichick loves linebackers. And I think Devin Lloyd would be such a chess piece for him to have there in that linebacker room. And I think it is a position of need for them as well. I think they need a linebacker there pretty heavily in that defense. So, what made you go with the wide receiver here?
I just think despite all the money they spent with Nelson Aguilar and those guys, I still think the wide receiver room could definitely use an upgrade. And with the need being there and Jameson Williams still being on the board, it was really a no-brainer for me. Like I think he's better than the 21st player off the board. Like I don't think that should be the case, but that's kind of how it shook out here. So once he got to New England, I couldn't let him go any further. Now, if I was a Packers fan, I love Treylon Burks, but and that might be their guy. Who knows? But if I was a Packers fan, and I was hoping that somebody outside of Drake London and Garrett Wilson falls to me, and the fact and to see Jameson Williams go off the board right before, that would be rough. But I don't think they get a bad consolation prize either on the next pick that we have the same. But that's what had me going with Jameson Williams. I probably would have went pass rusher as well if he wouldn't have been on the board, but I couldn't let him slide any farther.
Yeah, I think that would be a great pick for them. So now we move on to 22 with Green Bay. And this is staying the same as it was in mock draft 1.0. And we're going with Treylon Burks here to be the Devontae Adams replacement. I think it's possible too, they could even double dip at the wide receiver position as well. So Treylon Burks finally giving Aaron Rodgers a first round receiver, rectifying that. And, to me, this would just be the perfect Devontae Adams replacement, for them. I know we talked about this quite a lot, in mock draft 1.0. So don't want to spend too much time on it here. Let's go to Arizona now, 23. We both have the same pick again. That is Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. A guy that I've actually heard NFL teams actually like a little bit more than his counterpart, Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis had the big pro day, the big testing numbers, but they still don't view him as a 3-down player. Whereas Devontae Wyatt, a lot of teams think that he can be a 3-down player. He can rush, he is a better pass rusher, and can play the run just as well. So that's just what I've heard, regarding that. But we both agree Arizona here needs some defensive line help. They've ignored it for years. They have taken some defensive players, mostly in the secondary, linebacker room, stuff like that. They did have JJ Watt, hopefully coming back healthy as well there. But, they did lose Chandler Jones, and the defensive tackle position has been a need for a couple of years for them. So I think they get a really good player here at 23.
Completely agree. I struggle with the whole Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt thing, because I do think Wyatt is the better overall player, but it's just the testing numbers that Davis gave us at the combine. He's like arguably the most athletic player to ever test at the combine. So it's like, I guess we'll see, how that's valued whenever the draft comes. But I definitely think he'd be a great fit for Arizona, though.
Yeah, I think this would be a good move. So now let's move on to Dallas. I have them going offensive guard Zion Johnson here. I have him moving up, where I did have them taking a center this last one. But there's been some talk about possibly, the center. I can't remember his name.
Tyler Linderbaum.
Tyler Linderbaum. There's been some talk about him actually falling down draft boards a little bit just due to positional value and stuff like that. So I still think they need to shore up their offensive line, especially, they lost some pieces there. Their main guys are not getting any younger, and, they need to protect Dak. They need to open up that running game more, because it's clearly kind of affected how they want to play, due to injuries. And like I said, just guys getting older. So I think Zion Johnson to me would be a home run pick for them. I think he's by far, which I'm a really big fan of Kenyon Green as well. But I think Zion Johnson here would be a fantastic pick for them.
Yeah, that's almost the direction I went to. I ended up going with George Karlaftis just after the whole Randy Gregory situation, and them saying that they're not going to move their first-round defensive player from last year, Michael Parsons. They're not going to move him to edge and keep him at linebacker. I did have them grabbing George Karlaftis, but I almost went with Zion Johnson. I do agree that I think he should be the first guard off the board, and I think this is the area where it starts to happen between like Dallas, Buffalo, Tennessee, Tampa, even really Green Bay. I mean, that's like 4 or 5 straight teams in a row that could use help in the interior offensive line. So it's going to be a really interesting piece of the draft to see, how these guys end up falling, in this area.
Yeah, for sure. This draft is such a crapshoot for sure. So Buffalo, this is actually where I have Jordan Davis going to the Bills.
What a luxury pick that would be.
I know. I was going to say they don't really have a lot of. Well, I mean, they don't have a lot of weaknesses there.
Right.
So, I mean, I think you just take the best player on the board, and I think Jordan Davis would be an insane pick to add to that defense. Who's already, as we talked about earlier in the show, probably one of the best, if not the best, in the AFC and possibly the entire NFL. So you get a guy like that shoring up the middle, especially what a freak athlete. So that would be where I would have him. Where you actually have them taking a running back in the first round.
I hope they do.
Look at you go.
I really do.
I did it, man. I did it. I know that this is like, the equivalent of just cussing, but
what do we always say here on this podcast?
We always say never pay running back, but we don't say never draft running back. But typically,
we don't draft running backs in the first round.
It does make sense to wait on running back. And while I agree with that statement, I also think there is a benefit of, if you're a team like Buffalo, to where if like you had to pick a team that had like the least amount of holes in their roster, Buffalo is at the very top of that list. I do think there is some value in the back of the first round if you're able to grab your guy. Like if Kansas City would have taken the right guy as opposed to grabbing Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think that that's a perfect example where if you're a team that doesn't have a lot of holes and you have the luxury of being able to say, this is our guy, this is our favorite running back, and take him in the back of the first round, the number one rule for running backs is that you never pay them. And if you draft them in the first round, you've got 5 years of them on a rookie deal as opposed to 4. So that is the one time that I'm like, I'm okay with this, but again, they could wait and they could grab Kenneth Walker or, some other Rashad White, other guys later on. But I think with the limited amount of holes, I probably won't end up doing this in our final 1 and 3.0, but I had to at least once give them Breece Hall in this mock draft. It's too much fun. And I think he has the full skill set to be what they hoped Devin Singletary and Zach Moss would combine them to give. I think he can give them as one player. So it was just too fun to pass up, at least this time.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I would like that for fantasy though, because we know Josh Allen's going to run the ball. So
he would definitely steal some goal line carries for sure. But that offense is going to be so good that
they ran the ball towards the end of the year.
Yeah, Devin Singletary was a very viable fantasy option at the end of the year whenever they focused on one guy. So I think even with the threat of Josh Allen, if they give one guy the load, and Breece Hall has the build and to handle that, I think it would be a lot of fun.
And to me, I think Breece Hall, I think he'd be a perfect fit in Denver.
No, that idea can go to hell. That sounds terrible.
I'm just joking. Drew, if you didn't know,
the 7th round rookie.
Drew is a dynasty owner of
the 50-50 man.
Well, no, Melvin Gordon's going to go to the purgatory that is Baltimore.
God, I hope so.
I know Williams last year, I called him the 50-50 man because they literally that was the most even splits of any.
It was like before the game, every game, they're like, all right, we're going to give each guy 17 carries. We're going to make sure each guy get 3 receptions and we're going to roll it out. It
was the most fair football team I've ever seen.
Yeah, I swear. Free Javonte, baby.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I know you're excited. As you know, he was my favorite running back coming out of the draft last year.
Yeah,
I'm telling people. So, even more than Najee Harris. Javonte Williams was my guy.
The crazy thing, I will say, produced too.
Yeah, they did. I will say another position I really considered here was guard, was Zion. This was another Zion Johnson landing spot for me. The one spot on their offensive line I feel like they could upgrade is left guard. And I think Zion would be a great fit. So that was it 3.0. If 3.0 comes and things lay out this way and Zion's still probably on the board, that's probably the direction I go, but ended up having a little fun with this one.
Yeah. I mean, that would definitely be fun for sure. So now let's move on to 26. We have the Tennessee Titans. To me, this was just kind of easy. I mean, this is a team that they have a lot of holes, on their roster, cornerback, outside of really safety, running back, really just safety and running back.
Their
And
pass rush
I mean,
is
well, I mean, yeah,
They
but
were
you
good
know,
at
they
stopping the run too.
yeah they have a defensive tackle, I guess too. But outside of that, they just have holes everywhere. Just not a very well built team. Very pretty trash roster, honestly.
I was gonna say
But
this pains you to say
they
all these negative things now.
no, it's not painting me. I love it. Um, but I mean, to be real, I mean, they do have holes at some pretty key spots. You know, wide receiver would be one, quarterback, offensive line is a pretty big hole, cornerback is a pretty big hole, linebacker possibly a big hole. So I think this is a team that they can just kind of afford to pick the best player available. But I think they really need to shore up that offensive line because they're kind of stuck with Ryan Tannehill. So the least you could do if you are stuck with him is kind of keep him upright. So I actually haven't taken Kenyon Green here, the offensive guard. I saw some Twitter things earlier that Titans fans were saying, like, do not mock a linebacker at 26. Like, it was like the most, because there was a poll up. It's like, what position do you not want the Titans to draft in the first round? And linebacker was the number one. So I've really, just for that, we should probably put Devin Lloyd here.
Nicole B. Dean to the Titans. Confirmed.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love it. I would be a huge fan of Nakobe Dean going to the Titans. Or really, I mean, if you want, they do need a quarterback, pretty bad because Ryan Tannehill, as we know, is not good. So for me, I think, a guy like Sam Howell would be a good pick for him here. Drew's face is killing me. I can't. Anyway, I'm gonna pass the buck off. You actually have them addressing offensive guard as well here. So it's not, me alone. So you actually have Zion Johnson going here. I would not like that at all because I'm a huge Zion Johnson fan, and I would not want to root for the downfall of his career. So don't pick him. That being said, is this kind of what you're looking at with the Titans, where their offensive line is just not good?
Yeah, it makes the most sense. I mean, the offensive line to me is the clear glaring weakness, and especially like with Roger Saffold's departure in free agency, they have no experience whatsoever at guard. So if you can have a guy like Zion Johnson that's still on the board, I think this would be a no-brainer at this point. Like, sprint up to the podium and hand this one off if I was the Titans. So, and I mean, even if Kenyon Green's still to get there, I think either one of those guys at that point makes a lot of sense, to the point, like, with how much this team's going to lean on the run, they've got to get something going on the offensive line. And Saffold was really the only dependable guard that they had, and he's gone now. So,
yeah. To me, another guy too I would kind of look here is Bailey Zapp out of WKU. I think that's a really good first round quarterback pick. All right, so let's get off this trash roster. I don't want to talk about that anymore. All right, so Tampa Bay 27. Tampa Bay, this is another team that they are getting older at some positions. They have a lot of free agents. Obviously Brady's back for at least 1 year. So I have them taking George Karlaftis here, a guy you had going to Dallas at 24. I think, they just try to get younger at that pass rush. I don't know necessarily how things are playing out with some of the guys they have coming back. But like I said, they are getting older at that position. They did draft an edge rusher last year who I think is going to be really good, but I think that's always a team, that's a position that you can never have too many guys at. And George Karlaftis is a guy that I think can step in right away. And, he might not have the upside of some of these other guys, but I think he is very pro ready and he can produce. And I think as long as you have Tom Brady there, you want guys that can produce right away to help you win the Super Bowl. And I think this is one of those guys for them.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was just, Tom's back, so let's protect him. They lost a guard in free agency to Cincinnati, so plug in the other guard that I'm comfortable putting in the first round. This is kind of where the list ends for me in terms of guards that I think should go in the first. I think it's Zion Johnson and Kenyon Green. So I mean, the needs there, he can step in and contribute immediately. So shore up that offensive line. Let Tom stand back there and throw for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns.
Yeah, and this to me would be a really good spot as well for Tyler Linderbaum, because they also lost their center, I believe.
No, they brought their center back, but he is
it's a
very short-term deal, okay. So it would still make sense.
Yeah. Well, I think Linderbaum too. I think he could play guard as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, interior offensive line would be a good move for them. All right. So now let's get into Green Bay, which is the fun pick for me. And I have them double dipping in wide receiver, going Treylon Burks at 22, and then Christian Watson going 28. So they're getting two really high end, possibly wide receiver ones to pair. You know, they did lose Devontae, but to me, this is a really good consolation prize if you are going to lose a guy like that, is getting Christian Watson and Treylon Burks.
Yeah, I've soured a little bit on Christian Watson personally. Maybe it's a little bit of overthinking it, but I actually ended up he was one of the guys that dropped out of the first round for me from 1.0 to 2.0. And I end up, Devin Lloyd is a guy where I know linebacker isn't exactly a premium position, but he needs to be in the first round, and Green Bay does have a need there. And so I've got him taking Treylon Burks earlier, and I wasn't going to let the first round go through without Devin Lloyd being out there. So I did have him going here at 28, but I don't hate them double dipping at wide receiver. Honestly, I really don't. I'm kind of conflicted on Watson at this point, but I like the idea of double dipping, because I mean, if you look at the wide receiver depth chart right now, even with them adding Sammy Watkins, like that doesn't move the needle a ton for me. I mean, like he did, like weirdly,
you have a Sammy Watkins guy?
Weirdly enough, he had pretty good success. LaFleur was the offensive coordinator of the year. Watkins was with the Rams, and he had decent success that year. But like, it's just like that signing alone isn't going to stop you from diving into the wide receiver position. So I don't hate that at all. Like Sammy Watkins doesn't really move the needle for me.
No, the needle might actually move backwards. So,
the Lizard King.
The Lizard King, Sammy Watkins. Yeah, I agree on Christian Watson. I actually have a mid to late second round grade on Christian Watson. So this would be a reach to me, but I think the potential, and then pairing him with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who
certainly going to get the most out of Watson.
Yeah, exactly. So he does have stuff to work on for sure. But that being said, whenever you're 6'4" and you run a 4.38, this would almost kind of be their
measurables are off the charts.
Yeah, this would basically be their MVS replacement. And we know how much Rodgers loved MVS. So
look, for daily fantasy reasons, I pray to God they draft back-to-back wide receivers, because I do not want to play Sammy Watkins. And that's why I was laughing. So I'm thinking, like, how do I double stack Aaron Rodgers with Sammy Watkins and Allen Lazard? Like, that's just, it's cringeworthy, man, just thinking about it.
Brutal.
It's tough. It is. It's tough.
All right, so now let's get on to Kansas City, another team who is wide receiver needy. We both have them taking a wide receiver here. I have them actually taking Jahan Dotson. You have them taking Sky Moore. Guys almost kind of in a similar mold there, speedy guys. So kind of, pick which one you like, more than the other one. But I think Sky Moore would be a fantastic pick. I just, I've heard a lot of teams are really high on Dotson. Mm-hmm. So it'll be kind of curious to see what route they go. But we both do agree they do go with wide receiver as well, and that is certainly a need for them at the moment.
Yeah, honestly, like if I had to pick a guy that isn't in my first round on 2.0 that I think could end up being on 3.0, it probably is Jahan Dotson. I like him and Sky Moore both a lot. I think they would both be great fits, especially with Tyreek not there anymore. So I do look at these wide receivers very similar. They're very close for me in terms of how I feel about them both. So either way, I would not be upset about this for Kansas City. And then we are one and the same in terms of both the position and the player for the next pick. So I'll let you get into that one too.
Yeah, and actually, look, we're opportunity based podcast here, so we want everybody to get in. So Jared has yet to announce a pick, so I'm gonna let Jared announce number 30 from Kansas City. Since it is the same, Jared, go ahead and let us know who Kansas City's taking at 30.
Andrew Booth Jr., cornerback.
Right. Out of Clemson. Yep. So I believe this might have been a guy too that we also had in mock draft 1.0, or at least I'm pretty sure I did. So I don't know if you had him in there or not, but
I didn't. I had him going one more pick later to Cincinnati. But so I wasn't far off from you. But yeah, I had him one pick later.
Yeah. So I mean, this, I'm glad that you came around, to the light side.
I
Glad
had
to
to
see you join
drop
me over here.
I had to drop David Ojabo out of the first round. I'm still struggling if he'll be a first round pick or not with that Achilles tear. That's who I had Kansas City taking here at 30. I dropped him out of the first round for now. We'll see if that ends up sticking, but that's kind of what if they're not going to take a shot on the guy with the injury at pass rush, I think they, going corner would really benefit them. So I came around to your thinking.
Yeah. Well, look, at least you didn't leave Chris Olave out of the first round. So you're doing something right. All right. So 31 Cincinnati. I have them taking safety Louis Cine. Obviously there's been some talks, about
another Georgia defensive player going in the first round.
Yes. Probably that entire defense at this point should just be drafted in the first round. 11 of the 32 first rounders are just strictly Georgia defensive players. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy that I think is rising, consistently on draft boards. I think he does sneak in to the end of the first round. And then, like I was going to say, there are some talks about, I believe they franchise tagged their safety as well. So they don't have a long-term deal in place. They've been trying to work one out, but I don't know if they get one, done. So he could possibly be moving on after this season. So safety could end up being a need for now, and especially here in the future after this season. So this would be a really good spot for them to, take a guy like, Louis Cine. And you actually have them taking Tyler Linderbaum here, which Joe Burrow, I mean, you can never have too much offensive line help for Joe Burrow. And it does seem like that is a position that they've really pinpointed this offseason, is interior offensive line. So definitely some really good thinking there as well. And then Detroit, this is a little bit of fun for me. So I was just kind of thinking, I left it the same, and that is edge Arnold Ebiketie. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, honestly. But you actually have them taking a quarterback here, and that is Matt Corral sneaking into the end of the first round to round us out at pick 32. So what made you go with a quarterback here as opposed to earlier?
I mean, really, I don't think there's not a quarterback I'm comfortable saying should come off the board at 2 overall. But with them having 2 first-round picks, one of them being the very last pick in the first round, and then obviously they pick early in the second round, why not grab your guy? Why not grab somebody that could possibly be a franchise guy with the last pick in the first round, get that 5th-year option, and just take your shot on your guy there, as opposed to picking him a few picks later in the second round, but then only getting him for 4 years guaranteed. I think with only 3 quarterbacks off the board at this point, and a lot of teams being high on Matt Corral, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him go higher than this come draft day. I think he's worth taking the shot with that last first-round pick, to where, you can let Goff bridge it for another year, and then you've got, even if Matt Corral doesn't play a snap in his rookie year, you still have him for 4 years at that point, and you can see what you've got in terms of how that goes. But I even think that they could plug him in next year and start to kind of see what they might possibly have. I think the athletic ability and the arm that he has, just kind of the physical traits, I think he's worth taking a shot on at the end of the first round to get that extra 5th-year option out of it.
Yeah, I've really come around on Matt Corral, so I think this would be an awesome pick for them. But like we said, there's going to be a lot of movement here, especially in mock draft version 3.0.
Yeah, definitely.
So they possibly might get their guy a little bit sooner or later than that. We'll see what happens. So that takes care of all 32 picks. Jared, is there anything you want to add here on the end of the draft before we just go ahead and close the show out?
No, I would love to see the Lions take a quarterback in the first round. I think they are sold on Jared Goff as their guy right now.
And they got Hard Knocks, man. How can you not have you got 2 first-round picks? You got Hard Knocks coming for training camp. How can you not take a rookie quarterback?
They need some sizzle.
Got Dan Campbell.
Yeah, Dan Campbell's going to provide a lot of sizzle, but
man, I love Dan Campbell. We can do a podcast on just that guy. Would be fine by me, but
yeah,
I think that'd be awesome. They took anybody with the last pick, quarterback wise.
Just a couple guys, Jahan Dotson, ironically enough, and Nakobe Dean and Bernard Raymond those were three guys that I wanted to try to squeeze into the first round, but didn't end up being able to do so. And then Linderbaum at 31, he was a guy like I know Cincinnati's already signed a center technically during free agency, but I do think Linderbaum, despite the fact that he is a center, I think he is a first-round talent. I think his pro day did nothing but help him in that aspect. And I think he should be in the first round. So I had to find a place for him to go. And so I think he should be in there. But there were a few guys that I'm like, man, this is going to like the front of day 2 is going to be a lot of fun. And even Christian Watson as well with with all the athletic ability that he has. Like there's some guys that I was trying to find a way to put him into the first round that they were kind of right there off the cut. It's going to make day 2 a lot of fun. And then all the running backs and stuff as well start to flow at that point. So the end of the first round starts to really get me excited for the second round too.
Yeah, and I think too this is a draft as well that is extremely deep at certain positions, and there's not really that elite level ceiling at the top of the first round. So I think pretty much once you get past pick 7, pick 8, I mean you're talking about it's just a total crapshoot on to where these guys, because I think from about pick 8 to about pick like 45, 46, all these guys are just kind of right in there with each other. So if there was ever a good year to not have a first round pick, I think it would be this year, which is why you see so many teams that have, a ton of first round picks this year. And then on the flip side of that, you have a bunch of teams that have no first round picks this year.
Drew, how many picks does the Rams have in the first round?
They don't pick until like beyond pick 100, man.
I know. I was just playing.
So we're gonna be waiting a little bit, but that's all right though. I got.
They get paid off.
I trust in Les, man. Les Snead has done a great job finding mid-round talent over the last several years, which is the whole reason that this whole thing has been able to work. So
you got some new merchandise.
Yeah,
new shirt, new hat, new everything for not having a first rounder.
Yeah, that's right. No first rounder, but I got this DVD in the mail though, without a first round pick. So it's all good.
Hey, we don't have a first round pick either, but we got Carson Wentz. So.
Philadelphia does.
So yeah, I think you got the better end of that bargain, Drew. But that being said, look, we're loaded. We're loading up. This is the year. This is a good year.
There's one more mock draft to go.
There is. So
there's only like 13 days until 12 days by the time this gets put on YouTube until the draft. Like we're close.
Super close. And I'm actually on vacation all next week going into the next Tuesday. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time. We're going to go finish the Bourbon Trail. We're going to go.
Nice.
We're going to go do about 11 to 15 distilleries next week. But while we are doing that, I'm going to be working on mock draft 3.0 because I've got a lot of movement going on. It's not going to look anything like this. Chris Olave is probably going to be in the first round. So,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert there. So, it's going to look a lot different than what this one looks like. So I'm really excited. And that mock draft 3.0 is the one that like I really kind of put my focus into because that's the final one. And like I said at the beginning of the show, mock draft 3.0 last year, that's the mock that we were more accurate on that draft than all the big sites, all the big draft guys. We had more correct picks. So this is going to be a draft to where, it's really going to test how much prep we put into this and all this stuff. Because like I said, outside of about pick 7, everything is a total crapshoot in this draft in the first round. So it's going to be extremely interesting, but we are super excited to see it. Excited to see the Cardinals get another win today. They are on fire. The bats are hot. Pitching staff is not, but look,
they were today though. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. That's a winner. As long as they tweet out, that's a winner at the end of the day.
It was a good day.
It's a good day. Even the Redbirds won today. So it's a really good Friday. So yeah, man, we're excited to bring you guys some more coverage on the draft next week. And then, possibly, like I said, we're right in the mix of baseball season. So you might get a little more baseball stuff out of us as well. So Drew, I'm going to go ahead and let you close the show and we will get out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Yeah, as always, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We appreciate you guys listening. Be sure to if you're on YouTube, drop down in the comments and let us know what guy we should have mocked to your favorite team, who they're taking, who they're not taking, while we're idiots for projecting this player to your team. It's always fun to continue the conversation later on in the comments as well. So please, let us know your thoughts on how we see things shaking out. While you're here at YouTube, if you are here, make sure to, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff, so that we can, hit you with the content we've got coming all off season long, rolling into the 2022 NFL season. And any other place podcasts can be found, we're there as well. Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever the case may be, we're there. So if you guys could follow, subscribe, like, whatever that platform wants you to do, we appreciate it. But above all, we just appreciate you guys listening and appreciate you guys hanging out, and providing us some feedback. And, stick with us. We got 13 days until NFL draft day. We've got one more mock draft to go. And then we really get into the grind of, analyzing how we know exactly how we know the season is going to play out with no questions asked. So that'll be a lot of fun to get into.
Yeah, which means the Titans are losing, the Colts are winning. All is right in the world.
Sammy Watkins has 1,000 yards receiving.
As long as like 300 comes in week 1, he should probably be okay.
He's got the biggest week 1 ever.
Yeah, put him in your DFS lineups for week 1 and then never play him again.
That's
probably more than
how it works. All right, so thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you next week with mock draft. Well, not next week with 3.0. 3.0 will be the week of the draft, but we will be back here next week with some more stuff. Possibly NFL, possibly Major League Baseball. We'll see what kind of plays out. We'll see what kind of news drops. But thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.